Welcome to Tools for Entrepreneurs by General Assembly and Google for Entrepreneurs. I'm Laura Granka. I head up user research for the Google Plus team. I've done user research at Google since 2004, where I first worked with the search team, looking at the quality and UI of our search result pages. In the past few years, I've moved over to head up research in Google social space. I've always loved research, learning about people, learning about behaviors. I've done my master's and PhD from Stanford. And what I want to share with you in the next 15 minutes is my love of research and how you can apply the techniques that we use in industry to get yourself the best product you can in the shortest amount of time. So what we've got is research 5 ways. So research techniques you can start this afternoon. And because you're all really bright entrepreneurs, I'm sure you'll be multitasking and starting during this talk. So first, let's take a quick look at the product life cycle. Life of a product. You guys know this. There's your idea, you're building it, and then you launch it. The most common thing I've heard about why people don't use research is actually because they think it takes too much time. They think it's going to add a step to the process. But actually what actually works is research actually speeds up the process. You don't waste time, you don't throw away work, and you get to the best ideas fastest. So you probably already started this. You're an entrepreneur, you have a company, you have a great idea. And so what you've already done, you see an opportunity. You've already understood the competition and what else is out there. And that's kind of the first phase of research. You're understanding the users and what else is out there. The building it phase is that's the most iterative, and that's where research can come in the most in terms of how it's working. You want to get your product to the best launchable state in the fastest amount of time possible. And I'm going to show you 5 ways that you can do that. And finally, launch. When you get to the product launch, you want to evaluate and track the success of your product. Once you launch, it's just not one instant, it's not done. You want to track changes and success over time, and there's some really simple and free ways for you to do that. So these 5 techniques I'm going to talk about are 1, look at competitors, 2, observe people, 3, search the internet, 4, low-cost surveys, and 5, post-launch feedback. So let's jump right into the first one, looking at competitors. In industry, we can formally call this competitive analysis, but it's essentially what you're probably already doing. Who else is doing what you're doing or what's similar to you? And this is really important because you want to know what expectations people will have when they come to your product. These expectations can be set by competitors. For example, when Google first came out, you might think the competitors were just like Yahoo and Altavista. Actually, competitors were, say, the index in the back of an encyclopedia, where information is presented to you in an alphabetical list. Another one is the card catalog. These set different expectations about how people are used to finding information, and that changes how people will first interpret your product. Here, competitors have done a lot of free work for you, so learn from their mistakes. You can use competitor products as prototypes. Use them yourself. Have your friend use them, see what key tasks they do. You can look at the key features that each of them have. What's the difference between site A, B, and C? Do they each accomplish what they're set out to do? If you want to formalize it, you can also put things into a grid. Chances are you'll have a pretty good idea just by looking at these sites yourself. But if you want to formalize it, you can just rate things on poor, okay, good, or numbers, 1, 2, 3, and put them in a little chart. So that it's really easy to visualize which certain sites do well, where are the opportunities. Maybe nobody's really allowing people to finish what they set out to do quickly. Maybe all of them take too long and there's too many steps. That's really an opportunity for you to excel in what you're building. Next, observe people. We would call this usability research, but essentially that's what it is. It's watching and learning by observing what people are doing. There's someone sitting next to you, there's a neighbor at your house, there's a family member at home. If there's no one around, then you can even get in Google Hangout with someone you know somewhere else. But this is really important where you just want to watch people use your product. It can also be a competitor product if you don't have a product yet. You want to figure out what's working really well and what's not. And some common tips that we have here, some of the main things that we found to be successful is ease people in. If there's something that you're really worried about in your product or you think is particularly hard, don't start people with that. That's more likely to make them feel that you're testing them. What you really want to do is just have them use something naturally and try it out. So smile, warm people up, ask them how they normally do this type of thing, where are they normally, and get people to show you and not just tell. That's one of the main things we do when we do field research. We'll go into people's homes and we'll ask them about some of their online routines. And we don't just ask them to tell us what they do, like I use Google every day or I'll check the news. We actually have them show us, because then you find out, what sites do people bookmark. Maybe the only way they remember how to get to your site is because they've bookmarked it and they can never remember exactly what it's called or what the exact URL is. Also, use open-ended questions. Don't ask, would you want this? That's a yes or no, and you're unlikely to get something really interesting in response. Why would you want to do this? Tell me more about that. And the key thing here is you want to watch for nonverbals. So how people behave and the emotions that they might say. So people will look quizzically at times. People will sort of, furrow their eyebrows or pause. And it's those pauses and it's those facial expressions that you really want to jot down and ask them about later. Because those are times when people might not be able to explicitly tell you how they felt. And that's the other thing. People are pretty notoriously bad at telling you what they really want or what they need. When we did some search research back in 2005, we had, 2 different versions. We organized things and called things out. Here's web results, here's blog results, here's image results. And we kind of gave each of these things a heading. And people really liked that because they could understand how the information was classified. But it turns out when we actually had people search for things, it just kind of slowed them down. And they were just as successful and even quicker when we just sort of blended all the results together and didn't call out what type of information it was. And finally, answer questions with questions. People are no doubt going to ask you, what does that link do? Am I supposed to click that? And they'll be a little bit unsure at times. And you just answer their question with a question. What would you expect it to do? Tell me what you would expect it to do. One way to quickly gauge how this session went is something that we kind of love, and it's just using prompts for people to describe how they felt. This can be used in all sorts of situations. Think about the last time you drove your car. What picture best describes how you felt? And the important thing here is not the actual photo, but it's the story that people tell. So this gets people this photos trigger people's thoughts and memories in ways that they wouldn't have if they hadn't had this prompt. Maybe the last time I drove my car, I picked the guy that's angry and yelling with the blue background because my gas gauge is broken and I ran out of gas and had no idea why. These photos trigger stories that you wouldn't otherwise get. If you want to be a little bit more formal about it, you can also make grids of things. I document your key tasks as rows and your participants as columns, and just say how well did people do on each of these dimensions. And also, if you're trying to make decisions, one other way is just plot things on an axis of what's important to you. How important is it that people are able to do this feature in your product versus the frequency of how many times this usability issue occurred. And that can give you a quick sense of maybe how to prioritize development and fixing. The next thing you can do is what we call market research, but it's essentially using the internet. And it's probably something you've already started, and if you haven't, it's super easy to start because there's so much free information already out there. People have done surveys, reports, infographics that'll help you learn about your target market. One of my favorite sites is the Pew Research Center, and they have a ton of free reports about demographics, device ownership, geography, what percentage of people are using social networks between these ages, what percentage are male and female, how many times do they go on per day. And especially if you're making a pitch and you want to pitch what your target market is like, these things are going to be super useful. There's also things like consumer reports. What are the reviews about your competitor products? There's all this information online that you can get as free background context. And also learn from other mistakes. There's tons of information out there about design heuristics and guidelines. The Nielsen-Norman group is one, and I've included links to all this on the last slide, where you can find some common heuristics and guidelines, especially with newer things like tablet and mobile interfaces. What are the most common problems with swiping actions, with gesture input? What problems do people have so you can preempt them when you're building your own app? The next one is low-cost surveys. So I talked about all the data that's already out there and all this third-party research, but say you have a more targeted question that you want to answer that you can't find. There's several very inexpensive ways you can do this. One is Google consumer surveys. So for 10 cents per a response, you can ask any number of questions. You can ask people, what color package do you prefer? How familiar are you with X? How important is this to you in your laundry detergent? And you can get responses from a random sample in the United States or UK or Canada, and this can help you get some more context around your question. You can also target surveys to people who fit certain criteria. So you only want to ask your question of coffee drinkers. You can have a screening question. Did you drink coffee this morning? Yes or no? And then ask the people who selected yes, what type of coffee did they drink? One of my favorite things is actually just using Google Forms. Google Forms is a really easy way to do things yourself, particularly if you want feedback over time with a certain subset of people using your product. You can embed a link on your site. You can also send out a survey link on your own social network or via email to some of your friends and family and have them share that link further. And you can also do this when you have people start using your product. We frequently use Google Forms as quick little pulses. So say you have a certain subset of people using your product for a week before you actually launch it. So you can check in with these people with a quick Google form at the end of each day. Today, did you use our product? What did you do? What brought you there? And just get some quick responses leading up to your launch. And they also visualize some quick, pretty charts and graphs for you, so it's really easy to see the data you get. Finally, once you actually do launch, there's a lot of ways for you to get some free data just by nature of having a launch product. The most effort for you is probably this, where you embed a link on your own site, which could be just a link to a Google form for user feedback. You might be surprised at how many people just love to share your thoughts, whether it's to shower you with praise, whether it's to complain about something, whether it's to make a feature request. It's really important that you give users a venue to be able to share and express what they're feeling using your product. One, it makes them feel they're being heard, and two, it can give you some valuable insight. It's a targeted, it's a self-selecting type of user who's going to opt in and send you stuff, but it's still important to read. The next thing you can do is Google Analytics, just to track some quick metrics of who's coming to your site, when they're coming to your site, how long are they staying, basic things like that. And if you don't have Google Analytics, if you have a mobile app, just look at how many downloads you're getting from the App Store. Track this over time, not just on your launch day, but the following week, the following month. What are the reviews coming in? Again, this is stuff that people are just giving to you, so you should definitely use it. Don't squander it because it's free. So finally, after you get all of this, one of the common things that we hear, in terms of version 2 for products, is people want to add in a new feature. They think, oh, if we just add in this, we can solve that problem the user had. But oftentimes, it's a problem of simplification. So you should just go through the exercise. If you should cut one thing, what would it be? Even if you're not actually going to cut something, just think about what would it be. Because then you'll realize maybe you don't need that feature after all. Or maybe that call to action isn't clear because you have so many other things in the way. I'm always reminded of this classic psychology study where they had 2 stands of jam outside of a grocery store. And the one stand of jam had 3 types, and the other stand had 20 different types. And while the stand that had 20 types of jam definitely had a lot of people interested and curious about it, very few of those people actually made a purchase because there was just too much choice, too much overwhelming choice. Or how do you decide between boysenberry and raspberry? Whereas if there's only 3 choices, 3 items, it's much easier to make a decision. And think about that in terms of your products. What are the call to actions? Is it clear to users what they should be doing? And finally, so you want to think about when is research right for you. I talked about 5 things that you can start doing this afternoon, but it also really depends on where you are in your product cycle. So first, think about why you're building this. You're building a boat. Does it float? That's the key question. But then it's also about, are you building a boat to get from point A to B? Are you building a boat to spend a leisurely afternoon on the bay? All these things depend on, will affect what types of users you have and what the goals of your users will be. Also, what's your timeline? If you're launching in 2 weeks versus if you're launching in 2 months, that's really going to affect what stage you're at and what type of research you should do. Maybe you should just start right in and watching people with your prototype if you're only a week away from launch. If you have more time, then definitely spend some time looking at your competitors. And finally, perhaps most importantly, what do you want the research for? Don't do stuff that you're not going to use. It's not worth the work. Just only do what's going to be most helpful for you. Maybe you're just looking to pitch your idea to a VC. Then maybe market research and the analysis of the competitive space is going to be most important. Maybe you're trying to prioritize features for launch because you don't have time to build them all. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to differentiate yourself from competitors. Maybe you want to figure out how to price your product. All these things will affect the types of research that you choose at the times you do. And then finally, I just want to leave you with one framework that we use here at Google to evaluate success. And this ties into all the methods I talked to you about previously. These are what we call the HEART metrics. There's happiness, engagement, adoption, retention, and task success. So essentially, happiness is what I spoke to you about with surveys. How satisfied are you with this? How likely are you to recommend it? The engagement, adoption, retention is all the stuff you can get kind of at launch using Google Analytics or Play Store data about downloads, how much time people are spending on your site, are people sharing stuff on your site. And then finally, task success. That can come from all the usability work that you do just watching people use your product. So there you have it. Thank you. 5 ways you can do research to get yourself a better product in a shorter amount of time. Thank you very much for listening. Be sure to check out all the other videos by General Assembly and Google for Entrepreneurs.